the champion of the anti-apartheid movement, the first black president of South Africa. And we said, what a terrible system that was they had in South Africa. But the South Africans learned it from us. The laws of racial segregation, they lifted right from our law books. The system of Bantustans, of herding the people onto these small parcels of land for blacks only in South Africa, they lifted that from the system of Native American reservations in the United States. So when we talk about apartheid, remember we had apartheid here and we had it here first. But then the question is, how did we overthrow this terrible system of racial oppression and racial discrimination and racial control and racial violence? That system was overthrown by courageous people who came from all walks of life, most of whom their names we don't even know. But they stood up for us. And one of the things that's often overlooked when we think about the freedom struggle is the role that young people played in the freedom struggle. You know, February 1st is the first day of Black History Month, but it also is one of those significant days that talks about the role of youth in the struggle. It was 4 students from North Carolina A&T that sat in at a Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that started the sit-in movement. And within 18 months of that first sit-in, more than 3,000 young people were arrested in protests throughout the South. But there were other people who did not necessarily do it in an organized way, but who said enough was enough. And if it wasn't for those folks, we'd be sitting on the back of the bus today. Imagine that humiliation that generations have been able to escape because of the courage of people like Claudette Colvin, who we are so glad to have in our midst here today. I've been very fortunate in my life. In 1971, in one meeting, Dr. King had already been assassinated, so I couldn't meet him, but I had been invited to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the summer of 1971 after I had been appointed to the Board of Education, the youngest school board member in the country at that time. Now, I was going to receive this award, this Youth Leadership Award from SCLC. And in one meeting, I was able to meet Coretta Scott King and Ralph Abernathy and Andrew Young, and Jesse Jackson, and sitting in the room very quietly, she didn't have a big crowd around her, was Rosa Parks. And we all know and honor the memory of the mother of the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks. But at that time, I only knew one part of the story about the struggle in Montgomery. Many of us did not know of the role of Claudette Colvin, that in fact she was the first person to be arrested in 1955. And she was a young person, only 15 years old. But she had the courage of her convictions. And although the Montgomery bus boycott brought Rosa Parks to national and international prominence, and we remember her memory today, it was Claudette Colvin's case of Browder versus Gale. Aurelia Browder, Claudette Colvin, Mary Louise Smith, and Susie McDonald. Those 4, their case is the case that actually went and argued by attorney Fred Gray. It's their case that actually went to the federal district court. And because it was appealed by Mayor Gale of Montgomery, it went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And one of the several lawyers that argued for these women before the U.S. Supreme Court was Thurgood Marshall. And it is because of that case that the United States Supreme Court declared in 1956 that segregated seating on buses and trains was unconstitutional. And what a momentous decision that was, because it was upon the receipt of that decision that Martin Luther King ended the Montgomery bus boycott. So isn't it remarkable that we could have with us today one of the great pioneers that helped to dismantle the system of apartheid in this country? Let us welcome Sister Claudette Colvin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's an honor to stand here before you and share my story. But first, I'd like to thank the committee that invited me here, and Pop and Larry Hams and whoever was responsible for inviting me here to tell my story. This is, as Larry said, my anniversary, 59 years ago. I don't really know where to begin, but let me begin, as I said, the evening of March the 2nd, 1955. As the story goes, I walked home from school. We must have gotten out early that evening, and we walked downtown from Booker T. Washington School to downtown Montgomery. But it was in the middle of the week, so we didn't browse around down at the 5 and 10. So it was about 13 of us. We boarded the Highland Gardens bus across the street from Dr. King Church on Dexter and Bainbridge. I know some people are familiar with that church. But anyway, it was about 13 students that lived in my community. And so when we boarded the bus, it wasn't full, it wasn't crowded. So we sit where we was allowed to sit. The back, African American, we was called colored in those days. We sit in the seat where we was allowed, and there was a few white passengers there. But as the bus proceeded on down Dexter, it became full capacity. And so this young white woman was standing near me and in the rear of the bus, near the rear of the bus. And the bus driver asked for the 4 seats.